Jim Rowan, how you going? Been a while since we've done the current stuff, and what better time than G1 time to get back into it for, as per my count, my 56th podcast? Not really a milestone, but there you go. I just wanted to start with a bit of um, a wrap up of since the last time I talked about this stuff. So that's going back, or at least in terms of major things happening. The 25th of July, that would have been Wrestle Grand Slam in the Tokyo Dome. So that's nearly 2 months to the day. This being recorded on the 26th of September. Just finished watching night 2 of the B block. But let's go back to that. That's at the end. Let's start here. Wrestle Grand Slam. So that was when Chase Owens took the King of Pro Wrestling trophy off of Yano after the Rumble match. On the same card, Rocky Romero and Taguchi failed in their attempt to gain the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championships. But the Singles Junior Heavyweight Championship did change hands. Robbie Eagles becoming the first ever Australian IWGP champion, defeating Desperado. Okada beat Cobb on that card. Zack Sabre Jr. and Taichi defended successfully against Sonata and Naito. Oh, sorry, no, wait. That was when Naito and Sonata had the belts and Taichi and Zack took it off them. And then Yoshi and Goto made their challenge, and that turned into a three-way later. And that was the Tanahashi versus Shingo World Heavyweight Championship match. Shingo obviously retaining. There was the big Strong card, the Resurgence. Might have to catch up on that sometime soon as well, but in terms of these podcasts anyway. But that's when Tanahashi defeated Lance Archer for the United States Heavyweight Championship. Jay White, I think the last time we've seen him, he defeated David Finlay to retain the Never Openweight Championship. The next Wrestle Grand Slam was a bit over a week later, I suppose, maybe 2 weeks later. It was on the 4th of September in Saitama. That was the Yo versus Sho match when Sho went, kind of produced his new gimmick that he's still coming to terms with. That was the Chase Owens versus Yano match. So Yano took back the trophy after that match for the King of Pro Wrestling trophy. Actually, they announced on that card as well that the Tokyo Domes would be 2 days once again, the 4th and 5th, but also the addition of a third Wrestle Kingdom show, the Saturday that followed those 2 days. So I think it works out to be like a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and then that Saturday they've got another Wrestle Kingdom event, I suppose. Jeff Cobb beat Okada on that card, and then Tanahashi defended the United States title against Ibushi on his return. Then the next night, also in Saitama, also called Wrestle Grand Slam, ELP and Taiji Ishimori defended against Despi and Kanemaru, the Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles, but they failed in that defense, and Despi and Kanemaru became the new champions. That was when they had the three-way tag team title match, and the champions Dangerous Tekkers won that. Robbie Eagles defended successfully against Hiromu Takahashi, bit of a surprise there, making him tap. And then Shingo defended successfully, thank goodness, against Evil for the world title. And that brings us pretty much to the G1. That's the major stuff that's happened in the last couple months. And for those new to it, the G1 is an annual tournament promoted by New Japan. This is the 31st edition of it, though it is the 47th edition of the tournament if you were to count what it was called previously in the previous forms of the G1 tournament, and it's the most important tournament. This is the big one of the year. A lot of people kind of ask questions. I've been seeing in the New Japan thread of like, why does the champion enter? Like, why does he care about who he gets to face at Wrestle Kingdom? And they have this WWE mindset of, you win the Royal Rumble, not to win the Royal Rumble, to get the main event at WrestleMania. And I don't blame him. I think this is a flaw of the way the G1 and has interacted with Wrestle Kingdom in recent years. That's been a thing since 2012, that the winner gets the main event at Wrestle Kingdom, and that briefcase plays a part. They defend that right to challenge for the title at Wrestle Kingdom. Previous to that, you won the tournament, and that's a big deal in itself. You entered the G1 to win the G1. That's arguably more prestigious than holding the heavyweight championship, is winning this grueling tournament with all the best wrestlers from the company and sometimes outside of the company being involved in a round robin tournament. So that's something that I don't know. I think they should go back to. I don't really know what the benefit of having the G1 winner always be in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom is. If they just went back to them challenging at the next big event, that's kind of how it used to work. Or, of course, if you are the champion already, then you've also got the added honor of being the G1 champion as well. That's just makes you all the more successful. It's just another notch on your belt, so to speak. Something for the record books. Anyway, so that's the G1. As it stands, you do also earn, other than the honor of winning the G1, the briefcase, in which you can defend the right to challenge the champion at Wrestle Kingdom in the Tokyo Dome. But anyway, getting to it, this 31st tournament sees the G1 Climax debut of the Great Khan, who I'm sure would have debuted in this tournament anyway. Less likely are the debuts of Tangaloa and Chase Owens, who make their debuts this year, but I say less likely that they would have been involved if the full foreign contingent was available. So we just talked about Jay White, for example. There's no reason Jay White wouldn't have been involved in this. Will Ospreay is another obvious one. So that right there is two reasons why Tangaloa and Chase Owens probably wouldn't have been involved otherwise. But they are, and someone's got to lose. So let's see how they do. On the 18th of September, the New Japan G1 Climax 31 had its opening day in the Edion Arena in Osaka. And throughout the tournament, there will be live commentary in English from Kevin Kelly. And he will, I think, most of the time be joined by Chris Charlton, sometimes not quite. But Edion Arena is a cool venue. The stage looks really good for the opening of the G1. It's just like, it's pretty simple, but I like the way New Japan does this. There's just a screen centered above the entranceway. There's just a single entranceway. There's two flags, like big logo flags, either side of the entranceway. One with the G1 logo, one with the New Japan logo, and then they've just kind of got this scaffolding forming the entranceway, and then it's kind of like a hexagon, a couple rungs out. Just pretty simple on a raised stage, but and the way the lights kind of light up the scaffolding, I don't know, it looks cool. It's a good stage. It's a good setup. The opener was Ryohei Oiwa versus Sho. Oiwa being one of the new dojo guys with the likes of Yoda Tsuji, I nearly forgot their names, and Uemura off on excursion now. Uemura I just saw actually involved in Bloodsport, the Bloodsport coming up, and Yoda Tsuji, I believe, just recently picked up a win wherever he's wrestling. So big things happening with them. But Oiwa's the next in line. He faces Sho, who's I think got a new. I think this is new stuff for him. He's got kind of like his video game theme to his entrance video, and I think the music was the same as it was when he kind of came out as heel against Yo. But anyway, he's doing very heelish things in this match. He's throwing the young lion into the barricade. I mean, Oiwa, his opponent, but he chops him a lot. He was chopping him in sequence with the ring out count, so the referee's doing the count to get them back in the ring, and he's chopping each time the referee makes a count, or the announcer makes a count. But, I mean, there was a short comeback from Oiwa, but, he had a really good drop kick, which they tend to. They tend to always have a good drop kick. But it was a short comeback. Sho takes back over, wins it with the go-go plata that he beat Yo with. He's calling that the snake bite. In the promo, that was the first time Oiwa has been forced to submit, and he reckons it'll never happen again. Ambitious. Sho just walks past saying, "easy money," in English. Which he did make it look easy, in fairness. But let's get to the tournament. These are the A block matches, and the first of which was Kota Ibushi versus Yujiro Takahashi. Peter comes out with Yujiro for the occasion. That's something that's been occasional lately, but she's back. Ibushi, of course, he's coming off the sickness, the illness. He's just had that one match with Tanahashi that he failed in. And you would think Yujiro, last year wasn't very successful in the G1. That was his debut in the G1. Maybe a good way to give Ibushi a good start to the tournament. But Yujiro's not there to make up the numbers. He's using his pimp cane. They never call it a pimp cane. They seem to very purposely avoid calling his pimp cane a pimp cane, despite it very clearly being a pimp cane. But I mean, it's his gimmick. But anyway, he does pretty well in this match, Yujiro. He, apart from just the cheating, even when it's back in the ring, he hits his Olympic slam, or that in-call slam, and that gets a 2 count. He goes for Miami Shine, that's reversed a couple times. Yujiro has to kick out of a last ride powerbomb. Then the Kamigoye is nearly counted into Pim Juice. And then the next attempt at Kamigoye sees a near miss with the referee. So he doesn't spot the low blow that Yujiro throws next. And then he moves straight for the Pimp Juice DDT following that. And the crowd gasp, and Ibushi just kicks out really late, but Yujiro's fired up. Now he tries a different type of DDT, a lifting DDT, or the Impaler DDT. Execution, Ed used to use it as, but anyway, that one. And he covers, and he pins the former world champion Kota Ibushi. Yujiro gets his first points at the G1 with a shock upset over Kota Ibushi. And this was a really good match. I mean, I suppose it was a surprise, of course, the result, but it made sense in that there's just some ring rust for Ibushi, I suppose you could say. Although, after the match, Ibushi said that he's in perfect health, and he just overthought it, was his analysis of the match. He knows he needs to win the next one. He didn't see that coming. He's disappointed. But when Yujiro comes back for his promo, he just acts like he expected this result all along. Great Khan versus Tangaloa. They square off. at the beginning, kind of chatting to each other. I don't know how much of that they understood, but of whatever the other one was saying. But I think O'Khan probably knows a fair bit of English, having spent time in England. But they square up, or they tie up. Then they seem pretty even. They are of a pretty similar size. Until Tangaloa starts kind of winning the one-up battles that they're doing. He starts targeting the claw hand of Khan, and that starts to go wrong when Loa starts trying to rob in his dominance and like talk some trash. Khan's offended that he would say such mean things about the United Empire that he loves so much, so he starts fighting back. Jado interferes with a kendo stick shot, and Loa locks in the crossface, but he clumsily rolls Khan away from the ropes, so Khan's kind of able to use that to shuffle his way back to them. And then he survives Loa's attacks long enough to clasp on the claw. Jado interferes again, but Khan knocks him down. He goes for the eliminator, but Loa slips out and hits a heavy powerbomb for a near fall. Loa goes for the tombstone, but Khan reverses into the eliminator to kind of steal the points. It was he was definitely getting less of the offense in this match, and then kind of as a bit of extra salt in the wound, he takes the ice pack that was placed on Loa for himself, and then puts his foot on his fallen foe with his arm raised. Khan is the winner. His debut in the G1 and his first points in the G1. I thought it was kind of weird that that these matches were back to back, just in that Takahashi Yujiro that is, I wouldn't say dominated Ibushi, but he was also in that match, he was kind of the one pushing the pace and on top of the bout for most of it. And then in this one, Great O'Khan is certainly in singles matches higher ranked than Tangaloa is, but Tangaloa was kind of dominating this match, so I thought that was kind of strange that the wrong guy was on top in both the opening matches, although I definitely would prefer to see Great O'Khan selling rather than Tangaloa, just in terms of I don't think Loa would be as good at selling, not that I think he just as simple as that. I just think his selling wouldn't be as good. So it probably was for the best. But yeah, it was just kind of an okay match. Loa congratulates Yujiro, but he doesn't know what happened in his match. He's kind of not too bothered by it, really. He's kind of in good spirits. Khan reflects on a year of the United Empire in his promo. He kind of tends to always do that, really. And then we had Toru Yano versus Kenta, and Yano's black hair is back. Last time, I think maybe the last time we saw him, it was against Chase Owens in that no disqualification match, and he pulled out the blonde hair to kind of remind us of the old vicious Yano. And of course, Kenta's back in Japan. He's been in the United States recently. He's got a clipboard with him with a list of announcements that he demands are read before he enters the ring, Kenta. Apparently it's a bunch of fake achievements, which he's mostly making a joke out of. But then speaking of jokes, the referee's doing his checks before the match and he finds tape on Yano. So then Yano demands a thorough check of Kenta, and then he finds tape on Kenta as well. And then this match is just them finding tape everywhere. They fight all around the ring. They fight all the way up the ramp. Kenta's finding tape that I guess he left in the scaffolding, the entranceway, what I was talking about before. It looks like a hexagon where the lights shine on it. He's pulling tape out of there to try and tape Yano up and leave him outside the ring for a count-out win. It's really silly stuff. After that, they do make it back to the ring, and Yano finds tape. I think it was under the ring. The referee tries to stop him. Kenta pushes them together. That takes the referee out. Then Kenta finds another roll of tape and tapes Yano's wrists together really heavily. And then he throws Yano under the ring, wakes the referee up to begin the count, and sits in the ring. But he doesn't see Yano sneak in from the other side, so he went all the way under the ring, snuck up behind Kenta, and the referee is also looking in the same direction, making the count, so he doesn't see Yano with his fists taped together, low blow Kenta, and then, I guess in fairness, pretty impressively, kind of cradle Kenta up with his hands taped together to get the win. But yeah, just, I don't know. I mean, it's a Yano match. It's there to be a bit of a break, I guess. And I don't know. It doesn't make it any better of a wrestling match, though. It's just kind of silly. Backstage, Kenta's kind of not worried about a loss here and there. He will just enjoy each match one at a time. He says Yujiro's next, and at first he kind of dismisses that challenge, but then he does seem a little concerned with Peter. I don't know what that's about. And then Yano says that Kenta tried to get him, but he was the one roasted at the end. Tetsuya Naito versus Zack Sabre Jr. Naito walks out in his fancy burgundy suit to continue this recent tag feud. I mentioned before there was Sonata and Naito versus Zack and Taichi. And both Zack and Taichi kind of like Sonata, but they both hate Naito, and Zack hates Naito the most. So he'll be hoping to avenge his singles loss to Naito. When they were having that feud, they also had a singles match, and Naito got the win over Zack. So that plays a part in Zack's motivation for this one, I'm sure. The match begins as anyone would have expected. There's cockiness and chain wrestling. Naito targets the neck of Zack, while Zack is less discriminate. He kind of just goes after whatever limb is nearest to him. The Naito tactic is more successful at first, but then when running in for the Destino, Zack has it scouted. He drop kicks the leg, then targets it with various holds, as only Zack can. He picks that as his target moving forward, but the strategy is rudely and suddenly stunted by a devastating DDT by Naito. There's similar violence on a sunset flip powerbomb from Zack off the turnbuckle. There's then a Destino that comes out of nowhere, but Naito cannot capitalize with a pin. I think that is the spot in which Naito, unfortunately, genuinely injured his knee. But it is toward the end of the match here. There is a great spot that still occurs when Zack takes Naito for a spinning DDT off the corner and then holds on to go for a Zack driver, but that's counted into a Valentia. And then Zack reverses the Destino into a pin. Maybe it was that one. I don't know. Naito kicks out of that one. Actually, no, it wouldn't. I don't think it would have been that one. Leaving the because there is another Destino that's attempted, and then that's reversed into some other crazy submission hold, and that ends up being too much. Zack submits Naito to start the G1 strong, whilst the doctors come in to look at Naito because, yeah, as I said, at some point he hurt himself, and unfortunately in the days after this match, just a couple or a few days later, they announced that Naito had to retire from the tournament due to injury, which is, of course, very sad. Losing one of the biggest stars and all the matchups that come in the G1 that we would have liked to see Naito in. But if it was going to happen, I think it is kind of cool. It's not cool at all. Sorry, I'll rephrase. If it was going to happen, the fact that it's Zack and that he was targeting the knee and that's how it kind of ended, I don't know, it just gives Zack a big rub to start the tournament. So I suppose at least it can be framed in a very positive way for Zack. Like, they can use this injury to their benefit as best they can. Obviously, they prefer to have Naito around, but yeah, it was a good match. Just, I don't know. I think it might have lacked a bit of direction until that happened. But, yeah, no, but it was good. Direction storyline wise, I guess. It just, I don't know. It wasn't like it was a hateful brawl or anything, or a technical upsmanship kind of match or anything. It was just, they both tried to implement their own game plans, I guess. It was as simple as that. But afterwards, Zack said that this is a sign of his intentions in the tournament. He knows he isn't a favourite, but he's in it to win it. He is told that Takagi is next, who he calls Dragon Tits, and he recalls facing him in a WXW tournament, the 16 karat gold tournament. So he wants to take back that win. Takagi beat him last time in that tournament. The main event on this show was a cracker. Tomohiro Ishii versus Shingo Takagi, and it's everything that you'd expect it to be. These two run straight at each other from the bell and just lump each other with strikes. That lasts at least the first 10 minutes, and then they start kind of getting into more wrestling moves and throwing each other on their heads. There was a Made in Japan that earned a 2 count. They keep kind of going back to the lariats, and they crack each other with these lariats, and it just echoes around the arena. Some of the hardest lariats I've ever seen or heard, and that kind of is interspersed between these other big moves. There's a crucifix bomb that Ishii uses as a counter to a Last of the Dragon attempt, and that's kind of an example that's Made in Japan of these bigger moves that begin to happen. They start to slow down as a result, even though neither one wants to give in, neither one wants to show any weakness. They just want to keep clashing, but it starts to, they both like just start to fail and slow down. Their bodies start to fail. Shingo slips out of a couple of brain busters and then hits once again just as hard a pumping bomber as you'll ever see. Then they clash with headbutts, but a nifty swipe at the wrist while they do that, which was caught and called by Chris Charlton, is followed by a surge of energy that sees Takagi hoist Ishii up and finally keep him down with Last of the Dragon. Just absolutely beat the tar out of each other in this match. And the crowd were there for it all the way, by the way. They were just as loud as they could be. I'm sure their hands were sore after this one. This is the first match I say you'd really have to go out of your way to watch in the G1 this year. Afterwards, Shingo says there's this misconception that the IWGP champion can't win the G1. He plans on going on a rampage through it. And then he looks forward to Zack next time. He describes every match coming as a crash, but it is a dream. So with the first night of G1 over, our winners and point holders are Yujiro, Okan, Yano, Zack Sabre Jr. and Shingo. The rest, of course, on 0 points. On the 19th of September, still in the same arena, the opener was with the other young lion, Kosei Fujita, versus Sho, and it's basically the exact same match. Sho wins with the snake bite, the go-go plata, and he really kind of rubs his win in and he's laughing about it, and then he just kind of oddly stops and goes wide-eyed. Again on Reddit I saw people saying like, yeah, Sho's really got a unique character and it's really interesting seeing his transformation. And I can't help but disagree. What about this is unique or interesting? He's just staring into the abyss. I mean, it seems very clear to me that he's just kind of turned heel. He's got a new outfit, and he's just trying to figure out, okay, so I know how to wrestle like a heel. He's doing that fine. What else should I do to make myself stand out? And so far, all he's come up with is this stare into the abyss. I'm not overly impressed with. But not to say, look, it's early days. I'm not writing off his chances of being a good heel at all. I just don't think much has happened yet. But he says the same thing after the match. Easy money. So this is Block B, the first Block B matches, and we're starting with Yoshihashi versus Evil. Togamex's presence felt early on Yoshi's ankles, and then uses the distraction. Evil uses that distraction of Togo to blindside Yoshi, and then just kind of continues to bully Yoshi around the ring. At one stage, attempting to get him counted out, but Yoshi's comeback's pretty good. He works really hard. And the Kumigoroshi is a good way to finish any sequence, or to finish any sequence. I mean, that earns him a 2 count. I just like that move. He goes for karma, but Evil gets out of it, pushes him into the ref. Yoshi avoids that ref bump, but not... Oh, and the low blow. He catches a low blow, but then Evil rakes his eyes. Togo gets involved again. Yoshi counters everything as Evil into a neat pin attempt, but then with the referee distracted again, there is a low blow, and then everything is Evil, and Evil wins. And Evil matches suck, but Yoshi did pretty well to make this match watchable. He is an underdog you want to root for. And then after the match he says he'll beat Evil next time. While Evil says he's one step closer to his goal of winning the tournament, and that's just a means to an end. He will drag the rest of the tournament participants through the House of Torture, his new, faction name, I guess, or sub-faction name within Bullet Club. Next match, Jeff Cobb versus Chase Owens. Owens doesn't want to get near Cobb early. He just kind of wants to frustrate him and look for an opening, which he eventually sees, and he jumps at that like a pit bull. Cobb shakes him off and tosses him over his head with on the outside with a belly-to-belly suplex, and that just leads to a period of dominance from the Olympian. But the way Chase desperately claws at every opportunity to get back into the match is entertaining. It's just flawed in terms of a story because we don't want to cheer for him. He's a heel. He's a nasty heel. So even though he does it very well, and I mean, look, it's a heel on heel match, so it is what it is. But it just loses a little bit of what it otherwise would have had if it had that classic babyface heel dynamic. But Chase goes for the pile driver. He can't quite make it happen. Cobb fights back athletically, showing off his the moves he can do as a big man. Owens fights on to survive a little longer. He avoids one tour, but he takes the next. He ran out of weapons to use against Cobb, and it was just overwhelmed in the end. So Cobb takes the points in what was an easy match to watch. I wouldn't recommend necessarily avoiding the match if you kind of wanted to watch the more than just the very top matches. But I think it just proved this is why babyfaces are important in wrestling, because the match it lacked a reason to care. If Chase, was able to overcome the odds or not. It's like, well, we don't really care who wins. We don't like either of them, But still, a well wrestled match. It was good. It was Chase said he blamed his debut nerves for the loss. But he doesn't care about people not wanting him in the tournament. He apparently has seen that in places. Which, I mean, again, I go back to the people I named that would probably have been in the tournament instead of him, the likes of Jay White and Will Ospreay. I mean, we're talking some of the best wrestlers in the world. So I can understand why some people would feel that way, but, this is the situation they're in. Now, Cobb, he isn't a good promo. I've established this on this podcast. But he does give Chase some credit for the fight. He just thinks he's shot him back down to reality, and he looks forward to Yoshi next. All right. Sonata versus Tama Tonga. This, these two generally put me to sleep, to be honest with you. I like Sonata as a character. I just don't think his matches are very interesting. And I don't particularly like Tama Tonga as a character or as a wrestler, even though I want to like him. There's something about him I want to like, but I just can't get into his matches. This, though, was pretty good in that they the counters between the the dragon sleeper, what does he call it? The skull end, and Tama Tonga, of course, going for the cutter, gunstun, he calls it. There was some really neat counters, and especially the end of the match was actually pretty good. And then it ended with Sonata. I guess because they kept going for the same moves, when Sonata changed it up and went for the O'Connor roll, he caught Tama by surprise, and won the match that way. So, yeah, not a bad one. Afterwards, Tama does his usual breathless promo that goes nowhere, which, again, is just one of the reasons I have trouble enjoying his content. Sonata says that Tama is quite the looker, but he isn't ready to like him yet. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, if Sonata's a little interested in Tama or in guys generally. I don't know. But perhaps he was just being complimentary. Perhaps something was lost in translation. I don't know. I'll leave that up to those that care more to dig deeper. Hiroki Goto versus Taichi. Now, this was a good match. These two get straight to fighting. Really action-packed kind of a match. I like that Goto pulled out a Shouten Kai, his finish from back in the day. It's I don't know. It's fun when they pull out an old move. It kind of shows them to be needing to try anything to win the match, and it makes sense. Like, why wouldn't you go back to those moves now and then? They work so much for you, especially when you've had a break from them. You know, it makes sense that, like with, I don't know, Okada's Rainmaker, for example, just gets ducked and countered all the time, and people have seen it so many times that it becomes easier and easier to counter the longer he does it. So he needs to change things up. And for a while, he stopped doing the Rainmaker. He went to the money clip. So that idea is sensible, that if people are expecting it, then it's not really useful anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. I thought that was cool. Shouten Kai. And then, I mean, that actually, and it fit in with the move. It was just a bunch of strong moves, because these two they're not afraid to get rough with each other. But it ends up going to Taichi with the Black Mephisto. And this is another match I would say worth going and checking out if you're only looking for the top matches. After the match, Goto said that he wanted to get Taichi back after the tag team loss for the titles. Excuse me. But despite the loss, the G in G1 still stands for Goto. And then Taichi, he's lying down in the press area. He acknowledges the Shouten Kai. He's like, I'm not happy with that, but it was effective. He just didn't see it coming. And he says he likes facing Goto because he sees them as peers. They're the same age, but he might need a break after that match because he's become an old-timer. He calls them all old-timers. He wonders who will be the last standing of their generation. He named Nakamura as well, and I think someone else, but yeah. Anyway. The main event was Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Kazuchika Okada, one of the classic rivalries in pro wrestling history. And it actually is... It was very similar to a lot of the other matches that they've had together. So while everything was good in the opening stages and even into the kind of the middle part of the match, it's just not really noteworthy to me. I felt like I'd already seen it. But Tanahashi begins being successful in targeting the knees, which again is nothing new. But he can't latch on the cloverleaf, which he tried pretty early on. Okada fought back, He seems to be going after the head and neck of Tanahashi. There was the obligatory big match high fly flow to the outside. Okada goes for the money clip in the center, which Tanahashi has quite a problem with and is in that hole for a long time before he manages to get to the ropes to break it. But then from that, Okada gets on a bit of a roll. He, for the first time in, I'd have to go back and figure this out, but the first time in so long, he breaks out the Rainmaker pose with the camera zoom out and all. So that was kind of exciting, which is, to someone that's not a fan of this, must sound so stupid. What? So he put his arms out and you're excited about it? Okay. Yes, I am. I'm excited about that. Especially as a big Okada mark. But he didn't hit the Rainmaker, so it's not like it made much of a difference. Tanahashi avoids it, hits a sling blade, and then goes for the high fly flow, but Okada gets his knees up. There's a Rainmaker that lands, but then the next one that he goes for is turned into a cradle. And as the time is counting down, they're both looking desperately for ways to win the match. They're clubbing each other in the face as the minutes remaining turn into seconds. Tana goes for the sling blade again, but eats a drop kick, and then Okada hits a tombstone, picks him up, hits the Rainmaker to win the match just in time. I think they said it was 29 minutes and 36 seconds. So, yeah, not a lot of time left in the 30-minute time limit. Okada picks up the win. It was a very good match. I just think, and I don't know, maybe if you haven't seen all of the matches as I have, you would enjoy it more. But it just seemed a bit pedestrian, the fact that, I don't know, they just do all the things that they always do. And you might just think, well, why wouldn't they do the things that they do? Those are the things that they do. But, well, look, it was a very good match. And I'm not going to give it extra points for the fact that it went 30 minutes because, again, I think they padded it a little bit with the stuff that they do. But the end was great, and I enjoyed it. And I would still say you should consider this one of the top G1 matches so far. So Okada takes the mic. He says, of course, this was the final match, so to sign off, he says it means a lot to him to be facing Tanahashi in Osaka. He exclaims that the Rainmaker is back. And backstage, Tanahashi collapses on the floor. He's upset. He reflects on his recent record with Okada. He would like revenge on him and Akagi. Okada's asked about what the match meant to him, and he does some reflecting himself. He says that he had to wake up to beat Tanahashi, who he says hasn't lost a step. And his recent performances have been tainted with doubt. Okada talking about himself there. And he's wondering what his path back to the title is. He hasn't won the G1 in 7 years, but he sees himself in with a shot this time around. So he joins Taichi, Sanada, Cobb, and Evil as the B block participants off the mark. Going into the second A block night on the 23rd, now in Ota City, Tokyo. The opener was Yuji Nagata versus Tangaloa because of Naito's knee injury. So the way they did this was Naito forfeited all of his matches, and they've given out those points. So now everyone in the A block has now got at least 2 points. But in order to make it as fair as possible, Yuji Nagata steps in to give Loa a fight. And a fight he gets. They go about, I think, a bit over 15 minutes. And Jado is surprisingly absent from the match. Loa uses the backdrop setup, powerbomb that Clark Connors has been doing as his finish. I don't know how long Loa's been doing that, but I just thought it was interesting that he used that move. But the finish is apeshit. He beats Yuji Nagata. Backstage, Yuji Nagata says that he's retired from the G1 and he tried to put it out of his mind, but having suddenly been called up to it today. He gave his all and proved he could still go. To be clear, though, he's not in the G1. That was not a G1 match. It's just a filler match, again, because it wouldn't be fair that Zack had a match with Naito and then everyone else just gets a day off. So, whilst Yuji Nagata isn't quite at the level of Naito, he certainly put Tangaloa through his paces, and Tangaloa thanks him for that, for stepping up. He also wishes Naito the best in his recovery. He says that Nagata fought like he was going for 2 points. He remembers losing to him in the New Japan Cup previously, so he's glad things changed this time, but it was quite a babyface promo for some reason. Now to the A-block matches. So we had Toru Yano versus Great Khan, and Yano comes out with the braid, the hair, that he chopped off of Khan's head back in March. And he's brought it out to apologize, which I don't see how that would have worked. It just infuriates Great Khan, who comes after him. Funnily enough, Yano tries the same thing, because Khan's braid is much longer now than it was back then, I think. And Khan tries to tie it up to the barricade to get him counted out, but that doesn't work. And then Khan uses the severed braid to try and choke Yano. Again, it's all just silly Yano stuff, but I will say that Yano makes a good foil for Khan because Khan takes himself so very seriously. So it is an entertaining dynamic, and I think Khan should be given credit for his comedic ability because he plays that role very well, of kind of the one being, if Yano's antics wouldn't be as funny if the other person just kind of looked at him like he was an idiot. It's because Khan is like so infuriated by this, silly stuff that Yano's doing that creates the comedy out of it. So, again, I can see that there's some entertainment in it. It just doesn't make it a good wrestling match. Khan wins with an eliminator, so he gets his revenge there. And he tries to force Yano to kiss his boot after the match, but Yano manages to escape. He says backstage that he will not sink as low as kissing Khan's boots. But Khan calls Yano a desperate weasel. He thanks him for cutting the braid because it has now become more splendid than ever, is the word he would use, and a word I will look to use more often in my own life. Splendid. Then Khan asks what's next, his beard. He invites Yano to be his personal barber, working for free, despite admitting that it was a valiant effort from Yano. But he also signals an interest in the King of Pro Wrestling trophy, which I suppose he's earned a shot at, having beaten Yano. Okay, next one, Kenta versus Yujiro. They decide from the start that the affiliations are not a factor, and they won't get in the way. Which does leave the split of House of Torture from Bullet Club a little bit vague, because this is the first time a Bullet Club guy is coming up against a House of Torture guy. We're told that House of Torture is still a part of Bullet Club, but we haven't seen that dynamic and really kind of play out in person yet. So they leave it ambiguous at the beginning, and then they have their match as they would normally have it. Yujiro seems to be a bit cocky, having already beaten his G1 record from last year, given he's now got Naito's points. So he's feeling pretty good about himself, but you would think that's probably the wrong move. But he does pretty well in this match. I mean, he counters a GTS into a neat DDT and then lands that in-call slam, or the Olympic slam. And then he hits Miami Shine. That gets him a near fall. And it looks like he's on his way to finishing the match when he's hit with a Bisaiku knee. And then Kenta goes for the GTS again, but he's pushed away into the referee. Kenta sees a low blow coming. He transitions that into the game over crossface, and that forces Yujiro to tap out. So Kenta picks up his first points of the tournament. And commentary argue about how many points he has, which was confusing because at the time I didn't realize that they were including the Naito points, but we'll do all the totals later. This match was, they both have character, and it was well wrestled, but there wasn't too much interesting about the match in terms of a story to it or anything like that. Backstage, Peter assures Yujiro that he is cooler than Kenta, and then Yujiro comes back on his own later to state that Kenta has his respect. And then Kenta comes in and abuses the press as he usually does. He puts Yujiro over. He looks forward to Ishii next. He thinks that the Shoyo split has affected Ishii the most. It seems in a teasing way. He's kind of saying, now all the ladies are going after him alone because they don't know what to do about Sho and Yo, so they only have Ishii left. So Ishii has to deal with that. But then he gets more serious and he kind of refers to Ishii as a bit of a mentor. He kind of talks as if there's a mentor-student-based rivalry between them. So I'm not sure personally the history of that, but his non sequitur to the cameraman is that he doesn't like that the cameraman's just waiting for insults rather than reacting to them. It's annoying Kenta that the cameraman's expecting it, and this is like a game to him. Next up, Tomohiro Ishii versus Kota Ibushi, and again, these two just clobber each other. Very Ishii match, strike heavy. I mean, they're both strikers in terms of pro wrestling, so yeah, it's I guess kind of a similar match to the one with Shingo. They're both looking to one-up each other. Ishii avoids the Kamigoye several different times, in several ways, the last of which was a headbutt, and then from that he attempts a brainbuster, but Ibushi hits the knee again, just kind of a leaping knee, drops him down, lands the Kamigoye, and wins the match. This was kind of an ugly scrap. Yeah, I think it was meant to be. I think it was meant to kind of be like this ugly brawl, but a brawl that happens in the ring. So, yeah, interesting match. Not like I wouldn't say it was one of the top matches, but it was good. And Ibushi picks up his first points of the tournament. And that leads us to the main event, Shingo Takagi versus Zack Sabre Jr. And I mean, it's a shame, actually. I mean, we talk about the matches we lost because Naito's gone. This was one of them. Shingo Takagi versus Tetsuya Naito would have been certainly one of the big matches people would have been looking forward to. A match that you otherwise probably wouldn't have seen. So instead, it's Takagi looking to get revenge on behalf of Naito against Zack. And I mean, Shingo's match against Ishii, you knew exactly what you were going to get. And it was pretty much guaranteed to be good. But this is a genuine styles clash of a match. It's as pro wrestling a striker as you're going to get in Takagi, pretty much, and in pro wrestling terms, an expert technical grappler. So, knowing Shingo's strengths, Zack finds creative ways of targeting the power arm of the champion throughout the match, and that plays a big part in it. Shingo kicks out of a sudden Zack driver. There's some very Naito-esque elbows from Zack Sabre Jr. at one point, and that just fires Shingo up, who powers through them and lifts Zack into a DVD. He knocks Zack down with a short right to disrupt his momentum. It's a made in Japan for two. There's a pumping bomber that lands, but the damage done to Shingo's arm means that the cover doesn't follow it, and he's kind of, shaking at his arm. He instead goes for Last of the Dragon, but he's too slow. The first time, anyway. Then the second time, it's transitioned into a choke by Zack, and then Shingo's struggles only see him kind of tumble further into Zack's web of submissions. Takagi attempts to power up into a powerbomb, but in doing so, and I suppose a little desperation showing, as well as the damage already done to his arm, he's not able to pick Zack up. Zack just further secures that arm, and with an armbar, forces Shingo to tap out. Another really I mean, it wasn't necessarily surprising that he beat Naito. And you might say Yujiro's victory over Ibushi is more surprising, but this was a big surprise. And it got a reaction from the fans, definitely. Zack picks up his title belt, the tag team championship, and Shingo's belt. He raises both of them above his head before tossing Shingo's world title. So if nothing else comes of this tournament for Zack, he's earned himself a title shot, which is... I mean, after this match, this was actually maybe my favorite match so far. I think I liked it better than the Shingo and Ishii. So definitely a recommended match to go see. And wow, what a start for Zack in this tournament. It's two of the most, arguably the toughest tests in this tournament in his first two matches, and he comes out on top of both. In emphatic fashion, mind you. So he picks up the mic in the ring, Zack, and like the babyface he's becoming, he speaks Japanese first. He calls Takagi dragon bollocks, but then he also kind of gives him some respect and calls him a tough bastard. He switches to English to make sure we all know that he wields the greatest techers in the tournament, and he will go on to defeat the other 7 dickheads in front of him to win the G1 Climax. Backstage, Shingo's upset. He said he would win this match for Naito. He tried to come into this match with a game plan, but he is impressed with how Zack performed and realizes that this can't be about Naito. It's a G1. It has to be about him. Zack says backstage he's been waiting 3 years for this match after losing to Shingo in the semi-finals of WXW's 16-karat gold tournament. But he says he's not honoured to just be here. He's one of the best. He deserves to be here, and he'll prove himself the best by winning. He mocks Naito's injury at first before kind of doing so by saying, well, Naito would have done the same to him or tried to do the same to him, and there was no sympathy for him. This is a competition of pro wrestling. This isn't tiddlywinks or origami. So he makes a good point. And I like that because, he's not changing his character to be a babyface. He's just a little bit more justified in being kind of an asshole. But he says that he's chosen to save the tag team division, but don't let that forget how good of a wrestler he is on his own. Look at the state of his opponents. They quit, but he will not. Now that the Japanese dragon is done, he wonders where that American dragon is. And I know that Bryan Danielson has talked about wanting to face Zack Sabre Jr. before. I don't know if they have ever. The way I remember hearing it was that it was a bit of a dream match for Bryan. So that's very interesting that he would call out. He didn't call him out. I mean, he just made it clear that that's something on his mind. So very interesting. Anyway. So once again, yes, Naito's forfeit points were applied across the block, leaving the standings here for the A block. Okan on 6 points. He's only one of 2 wrestlers in the block that remain undefeated. Zack Sabre, though, only on 4 points because he actually had to beat Naito, so he didn't get any extra points added on. This will even out in the end. Shingo's on 4 points. This is looking like the even Steven block. Shingo, Yano, Yujiro, Kenta, and Ibushi all on 4 points. Ishii, Tangaloa on 2 points, and Naito 0 and out. But early stages, anything can happen from here. So the other B block match took place on the 24th, again in Oda City. It opened with Hiroshi Tanahashi and Hiroki Goto, and Goto goes for the Shouten Kai again. But this time it was unsuccessful. Of course, he was using that move back when Tanahashi was on top and these two were having matches for the championship. So Tanahashi has it scouted. But Goto also has the high fly flow scouted. He dodges that. He hits a reverse GTR, But then he seems to get a bit lost with what should come next, and Tanahashi takes advantage of his hesitation, catching Goto with a cradle to steal the match before Goto even knows it, because he tries to attempt a pin after Tanahashi's 3 counts already been made. It was a decent match between these two, but I did notice it was a bit clunky at times. There was some transitions that weren't so pretty, so just a bit of an okay match, really. Goto backstage argued that his shoulder was up, but that's about it. Tanahashi says he wants to stay in the competition. He names Okada as the pace setter. He can't afford to lose another match. He says it's going to be a long month, but we should all take our time and enjoy it. And then he starts reflecting. He remembers his match with Goto back in 2007, which was Goto's first challenge for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. And he says it feels the same now as it did back then. And he describes that time for New Japan as very tough. And he thought it was that match in particular that began New Japan's comeback. If you want to hear more about that time, of course, I've got a bunch of podcasts up about that time in particular. We've now covered 2007 and 2008. But moving along in the G1 here, we got Tama Tonga and Chase Owens, and I don't know, I didn't think too much of this match, to be honest. The Good Bad Guy is such a dumb name, by the way. I don't like it. I saw Tama kick out of a jewel heist, which is one of the kind of finish moves for Chase Owens, although package pile driver is his true finisher. And when he goes for that, Tama's able to counter it into a gun stun, and that ends the match there. Tama helps Chase up and 2-sweets him after the match, so Bullet Club is fine. Just again, it's a heel match and a Bullet Club match, and just, I don't know, it's not much to care about in my opinion. Backstage, Chase admits Tama was the better man tonight, but Bullet Club is for life. Tama says, now this is interesting, that he's the captain of this ship now. He asks where the fuck Jay White is, and he seems to suggest if Jay White were to return, that he would defend his spot at the top. Those of us that have been fans long enough to see these Bullet Club infighting kind of feuds are probably skeptical of this stuff. I am too, but at the same time, it does make sense that these guys would all be kind of fighting for top spot. And you know, look, Tama Tonga absolutely deserves at least to be in that conversation of being a leader. He's the only one left that's an original, really. I mean, Farley's not around anymore. So, it's interesting. Just depends where they go with it. Yoshihashi versus Jeff Cobb was next. These two have kind of been feuding for a little while, back on that Summer Struggle tour, which makes it odd when Yoshi, after this match, said Cobb was bigger and stronger than he expected. It's like you've been facing him all the time. But based on that, you probably guessed, Cobb wins this match. He gives Yoshihashi the tour of the island. Not before Yoshi pulled out a Canadian destroyer at one point. That was pretty cool. But I will say, Yoshi, he does have good matches. This was a decent match here. It just, they both lack charisma. That's certainly very clear. So, a good wrestling match, just not a lot of... Kind of what I said before about Yujiro and Kenta. Like, they both have a bit of charisma, a bit of character, but maybe the match wasn't as good as this one, but this one was missing that charisma and character that those two have. So, other side of the coin, perhaps you could say. And then, that's what Yoshi said after the match. Cobb predicts a final between himself and Great Khan. The co-main event was Taichi and Sonata. These two both come from All Japan, although really Taichi's the only one that wrestles like he came from All Japan. The start of this match is a bit silly. They do a pec flex off. And is now a good time to mention that this arena is empty. Like, the 17 people in attendance don't really care about this. Even though these two are very popular. But yeah, and then like Taichi starts doing this, like holding Sonata's hands behind his back, and a move I guess is supposed to look like it's painful, but it doesn't look like it's painful, and it lasts for minutes into this match. So not a great start in my opinion to the match, but once it got going, it was pretty good. Taichi landed a nice bridging back suplex, kind of a Nagata-esque, that Sonata kicks out of, but out of Black Mephisto, Sonata does not kick. That was the finish to the match, and that went 25 minutes. But the first maybe 10 were just goofball stuff. If you want to fast forward that, the last 15 weren't bad. Sonata calls Taichi his bro after the match. He says they share some traits, but he'll continue his own push toward the tournament final. Taichi says he looks like he lost, because wrestling Sonata always wears him out, but he likes Sonata the best. He and Zack have now wiped out LIJ in the G1, and he predicts Zack going the distance and himself becoming the new Yokozuna of New Japan. Then in the main event, Okada versus Evil, and this had all the usual Evil rubbish. We get Okada's Rainmaker pose, which I guess now he's just doing all the time again, but why here? Why in front of 17 people in an Evil match? It's such a waste of it. Like, the first time he used it, I actually kind of thought it was a waste of it using it against Tanahashi, because I felt like it would have been a real big pop if he did it when the crowds were back, but, they can't wait forever either, so it is what it is. Anyway, I guess it's just back. He misses the Rainmaker again after doing the pose, but he hits it later, then maintains wrist control. Evil fights off another, but then hits the dropkick instead and the tombstone. Evil needs to get desperate now because Okada's closing in, so he throws the referee into Okada, gives him a low blow. Okada gets Evil back into the money clip, but Evil pulls down the referee again. This time Togo attacks Okada, and they attempt a double team move, but Okada fights them both off. They trade STO, or what does he call it? Everything is Evil, and Rainmaker counters before Evil hits Darkness Falls, and then Okada hits an STO on Evil, and then a sit-out tombstone that he started doing before the full Ripcord Rainmaker to finish Evil. Thank goodness. Ugh. I saw actually one more mention of Reddit that people were kind of blaming Evil for the terrible attendance. And I mean, he kind of helped. These matches suck. These matches suck. A lot of matches, I mean, look, in fairness, I also, Tanahashi and Okada, two of my very favorites. I criticized them just before for being a bit paint by numbers. So this isn't me just hating on Evil, and there's a bunch of this in New Japan. It is a bit paint by numbers sometimes, and that's a general criticism that I have of the promotion. But Evil is like the worst example of it. And just all the interference and just pulling the referee down all the time, and they don't do anything about it. I think what the worst part is that he is a very good, I guess, depending on how you look at it, he's a very good demonstration of one of the very worst parts of New Japan in this paint-by-numbers style, and then he combines that with one of the other worst parts of New Japan, which is the referees being goofballs and all the cheating and stuff going unpunished, and all the interference and all that rubbish. So I think he's 2 for 1 in just bad wrestling. Anyway, after this match, Okada cuts as usual, "I'll win the tournament" kind of promo in the ring. And then backstage, he says he's been under the radar far too long now, but he's feeling a surge in the expectations from the fans that he hasn't felt in years. He's got Yoshihashi next. He praises his progress, but he believes that his own momentum is greater. And Okada sits atop of the Block B standings on 4 points, along with Jeff Cobb and Taichi. Evil, Sonata, Tanahashi, and Tamatonga are all on 2 points. Yoshihashi, Hiroki Goto, and Chase Owens are all yet to be off the mark. So that is the standings. 4 events in, 2 events each in both blocks, and I think I'll probably keep up with the G1 moving forward for the next few weeks. So if you enjoyed this one, give it a like. Tell me what you thought of the matches in the comments, all that usual YouTube stuff. Or if you're listening to this on one of the other podcast websites that I upload this to, there should probably be some kind of way to do that there as well. Do it all and more. Until next time, have a good one.